In this video, I will be demonstrating how to set up and manage URLs in Dynamics 365 Commerce Site Builder. A static URL typically maps a specific HTTP request to a specific page in Site Builder, but it can also serve as a redirect to another URL. A dynamic URL maps an HTTP request that matches a specific pattern to a specific page on your site. As an example, Site Builder uses a dynamic URL to map requests for any of the hundreds or thousands of products or categories to a single product or category page. Now let's look at how to create and manage static URLs. Static URLs can be created in one of two ways. They can be created automatically when you create a new page, or they can be created manually in the URLs view. So let's create a URL as part of new page creation. You simply provide a name for the page in the URLs field. This is the name that will appear on the end of the URL and is visible to customers. When you click OK, you'll see that the URL has been created for the page in the URLs view. Now, I'll quickly add some content to this page so we can preview it later. At this point, neither the page or the URL that was created for it have been published yet. But even after I finish editing the page and publish it, the page still won't be accessible to customers by the URL until I publish the URL. When we look at the URL for this page, we can see that it hasn't been published yet because its status is draft and the published assignment is set to none. Once the URL is published, the published assignment shows the page the URL is pointing to now on the live site, and the page will now be returned by requests to that URL. You also have the option of creating a page without creating a URL, which allows you to manually create the URL later on, or update an existing URL to point to your new page. So let's manually create a new URL and assign it to a page. I already have a page created that doesn't have a URL that points to it. Now, we'll go to the URLs section, create a URL, and point it to that page. To create a URL, click New and then New URL, enter the URL path, and choose a page to point the URL to. At this point, if we try to publish the URL, we'll get a notification that tells us that the page it's pointing to isn't published. This prevents us from accidentally publishing URLs that return 404s. Once we publish the page, we can publish the URL and the page will be accessible by the URL. Now we'll update an existing URL to point to a different page. This is useful when you want to make major changes to a page by building a new page and swapping it with the old page when it's ready for release. Once we update and publish the URL, we can see that the URL now returns the new page. Let's update the URL to redirect to a different URL on our site. I'll also point out that you can configure a URL to redirect to an external site, or you can specify whether you want it to be an HTTP 301 or 302 redirect. In this example, we'll redirect the About Us URL to the history URL we created earlier. After we publish the redirect, requests to the About Us URL will redirect to the history URL. And now a quick explanation of dynamic URLs. A dynamic URL in Site Builder binds an HTTP request which matches a pattern to a specific page on your site. The three types of dynamic URLs that Site Builder currently supports are product, category, and HTTP 400 series error. For product URLs, any request that contains a product ID with .p appended will be mapped to the product description page the alias points to, and the product ID in the request is used to retrieve the product details to hydrate the page with. Categories work exactly the same way for requests that contain a category ID with a .c appended. When you customize a product or category, an alias gets created for you, which maps the product or category page you created that contains your additional storytelling. The default 4XX alias captures all requests that return an HTTP 400 series result and redirects the user to the page mapped to the 4XX default alias, typically your 404 page. If you create a new site from scratch in Site Builder, one of your tasks will be to create your dynamic URLs. You do that by going to the URLs section, select New, and then New Alias, enter the alias name for the dynamic URL you are creating, choose the page you want the alias to point to, and click OK. And don't forget to publish the alias when you're ready to release it.